My name is Captain Tessa Harlow. The last time I wore my uniform in public, my own mother turned her head and pretended not to see me. I had just returned from an 18-month deployment, embedded in a mission so classified that even my emergency contact forms were redacted. I couldn't tell anyone where I'd been or what I'd done. Not my neighbors. Not even my parents. I came back to the States with a new scar near my collarbone, a head full of Arabic phrases I spoke in my sleep, and a quiet understanding that my work had prevented something awful from happening on American soil. I didn't expect a parade. I didn't want one. All I hoped for was a soft landing, a bit of normalcy, maybe a phone call from someone who cared. What I got instead was a cream-colored envelope in the mail, addressed to Tessa Harlow and Guest, written in someone else's handwriting. It was an invitation to my younger sister Brooke's engagement party. The calligraphy was flawless. The implication wasn't. It didn't say, "Dear Tessa," or "Can't wait to see you." It didn't feel like family. It felt like I'd been added to the guest list out of obligation, somewhere between the florist and the distant cousins. Still, I RSVP'd yes. Just me. I'd spent so long alone that inviting someone to pretend they knew my life felt more exhausting than walking in alone. I chose a simple dress, dark blue, modest, something quiet, something that wouldn't draw attention. I drove myself in the same car I've had since college, parked 2 blocks away because the circular driveway was lined with BMWs and Mercedes. My mother answered the door. She looked at me for 3 full seconds before her smile froze into something polite. "Tessa, you came," she said, like she'd spotted a neighbor she hadn't expected. "Of course," I replied. "It's Brooke's day." She didn't hug me. She didn't ask how I'd been. She motioned toward the back and said, "Just try to blend in, sweetheart." I walked through the house I grew up in, past framed photos of Brooke, smiling through milestones I hadn't been invited to. She was everywhere. Her graduation, her design awards, her sun-kissed vacations with Preston, her fiancé. I was in a few of the older pictures, but somewhere around age 25, I vanished. I hadn't been cropped out. I'd been erased. The backyard looked like something out of a lifestyle magazine. White tents, floating candles, linen-covered tables, champagne already flowing. I spotted a few familiar faces, relatives who used to pinch my cheeks when I was little. None of them looked twice. Brooke was at the gift table, surrounded by women in expensive shoes and curated hair. She looked like our mother. Blonde, radiant, untouched by stress. When she saw me, her eyes widened for a second. "Tessa," she said, like it was a surprise. "You actually came. I wouldn't miss it," I said, handing her a small gift wrapped in silver paper. She took it without looking. "That's so sweet." Then she turned to the group around her. "Everyone, this is my sister. She does something with federal security." "I don't know. I can never keep up." A woman beside her nodded. "Like TSA?" she asked. "Sure," I said. It was easier than explaining how many nights I'd spent analyzing threats, tracking cells, and preventing violence. I smiled the way you do when you know there's no point trying to make someone understand. Another woman offered sympathy like it was an hors d'oeuvre. "That must be so draining. Do they at least pay you well?" Brooke laughed. "Tessa's always been about the mission," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "We're all very proud." But I heard the silence behind the words. The pride that wasn't real. The reminder that I was something useful, but not admirable. The kind of family member you mention out of politeness, not out of pride. I stepped away and found a quiet corner near the hedges. The music was soft, the laughter gentle, and I stood there, holding a glass of champagne I wouldn't drink, surrounded by people who knew nothing about me. I'd risked my life for this country. But in that moment, I couldn't remember the last time anyone in my family had asked what I actually do. The backyard was so perfectly styled, it could have been a magazine spread. White linen tables, gold cutlery, string lights overhead like stars, pretending to be casual. A jazz trio played softly near the koi pond, and servers in black vests moved through the crowd with trays of champagne and crab cakes. I stood near the edge of it all, wishing I'd worn anything but navy blue. Everyone else sparkled. Silk, chiffon, designer shoes that never touched grass. I'd chosen something safe, something professional. And suddenly, it felt like a uniform for a job I wasn't qualified for anymore, the role of sister. People passed me without pause. A few smiled politely, like I might be a distant cousin or someone from the groom's office. One woman leaned in and said, "Restrooms are inside, through the sunroom," before walking off. I wasn't offended. She assumed I worked the event. Brooke had always belonged in this world. She glided across the lawn like she was born to it, golden hair tucked perfectly, that subtle, practiced laugh she used when people complimented her without asking questions. I knew that laugh. It had never been meant for me. When she finally introduced me to her friends, it was like reading a label she barely remembered. "This is my sister, Tessa. She does something in government. Security stuff, I think. I can never keep up." They all turned to me with matching curiosity, like I was a puzzle piece they didn't quite know where to place. "I work in federal law enforcement," I said, keeping it vague. I'd learned the hard way not to explain my job in social settings. Eyes glazed over the moment I said, "military," or "intelligence." The words didn't fit in this world of interior design, gallery openings, and destination bachelorettes. One woman tilted her head. "Oh, like TSA?" I smiled, just enough to be polite. "Something like that." Another nodded. "Must be intense. Lots of difficult people, I bet." Her voice held that syrupy tone people use when they want to sound sympathetic, without doing the work of empathy. Brooke chimed in. "Tessa's all about the mission. She's very dedicated." Her tone was too light, like she was describing someone who volunteers at a pet shelter. "We're super proud." I knew she meant well, or maybe she didn't. It didn't matter. The damage was done long ago. In all the years they didn't ask, didn't care. I wandered to a table near the back and sat alone, sipping water from a champagne glass just to look busy. From where I sat, I could see my mother introducing Brooke to judges, lawyers, people with names you recognize in headlines. She glowed under their attention, while I stayed in the shadows like a forgotten anecdote. When the toast started, I watched Preston take the mic. His words were polished, heartfelt, and rehearsed. "Brooke is my home," he said. "She makes the world brighter." The crowd applauded, and Brooke blushed the way you're supposed to. I clapped too, even though something in my chest went still. Later, she opened gifts with theatrical gratitude. Designer luggage, a coffee maker that probably costs more than my rent. When she got to mine a handcrafted ceramic vase from a veteran-owned studio, she smiled politely and set it aside without a word. No eye contact. No thank you. I stayed longer than I should have. Some stubborn part of me didn't want to give them the satisfaction of disappearing early. But each minute felt like a quiet erasure. Every sidelong glance, every comment that landed wrong. It added up to something heavy. Something I couldn't shake. When I finally slipped through the side gate, no one noticed. Not even Brooke. I was just a guest after all. Not really family. Not someone to ask about. Not someone to miss. It was almost 2 a.m. when my phone rang. I knew before I looked that it wasn't good news. No one calls at that hour with something you want to hear. It was my mother. Her voice cracked before she said my name. "Tessa. Thank God. Something's happened. It's Brooke. She's been arrested." I sat up straight, already reaching for my uniform. "Arrested for what?" She sobbed. "They won't tell us. Federal agents came to the house. They had a warrant. They took her away in handcuffs." I was halfway into my boots before she finished the sentence. "Your father's at the detention center, but they won't let him see her. We don't know what's going on." Her panic was real, but part of me had already slipped into protocol. "Where is she being held?" I asked. "The federal building in Alexandria." "Please, Tessa. You work for the government. You can help her, right?" I didn't answer. I was already out the door. The drive to my base felt shorter than usual, even though I blew past 2 red lights and barely noticed. I swiped into the command center and logged into the secure system. Heart pounding. My clearance let me access cases that would never make the news. I typed in Brooke's name and watched the file populate. I didn't want to believe it. But there it was. Her company, the design firm she co-founded, was the center of a multi-million-dollar money laundering investigation. The scope was staggering. Fake renovations, ghost clients, invoices used to wash dirty money, tied to foreign cartels and extremist groups. The documents kept going. Emails, wire transfers, surveillance photos. It wasn't just circumstantial. Brooke's digital fingerprints were everywhere. And worse, the operation was connected to an intel task force I'd advised during my last deployment. This wasn't just a financial crime. Some of that laundered money had made its way into the hands of groups we'd classified as terrorist threats. I sat there, frozen, as two worlds that had always been separate suddenly collided. My sister, my family, mixed up in the very networks I'd dedicated my career to dismantling. I wasn't supposed to be involved. Conflict of interest was written into every line of our conduct code. But I couldn't stop reading. The case agent was someone I knew. Catherine Reed. Sharp, meticulous, respected. She was waiting for me outside the operations room when I finally stood up. "You're related to Brooke Harlow," she said, not asking. "She's my sister." Reed nodded and led me to a private conference room. "This won't be easy." She slid a printed briefing across the table. "We've been building this case for over a year, 27 arrests in 4 states. Your sister is one of the primary targets. We have her on recordings. We have her emails. She knew exactly what she was doing." I wanted to interrupt, to say Brooke couldn't possibly be part of something this dark. But the evidence was sitting in front of me. "She's being charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and financing of international terrorism," Reed continued. "We don't think she just went along with it. We think she was a key facilitator." The word hit me like a blow. Facilitator. Not just complicit. Strategic. I closed the file. "Does my family know any of this?" Reed shook her head. "Just that she's facing financial crimes. Nothing deeper yet." I stood slowly. My heart felt like it was pulsing in my throat. "I want to be in the courtroom," I said. "For the arraignment." Reed raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that?" I nodded. "Yes. I need to see it for myself." She didn't argue. She just said, "Then you'd better prepare yourself." I left the base as the sun started to rise, my mind racing. I wasn't sure what scared me more, the possibility that Brooke had been framed, or the growing certainty that she hadn't. I arrived at the courthouse before the doors opened. The hallway smelled like old paper and worn-down wood polish. I wore my full military uniform, freshly pressed, with every ribbon and badge in place. The navy fabric sat heavy on my shoulders, not from weight, but from meaning. This uniform had seen places my family never asked about. It carried medals they'd never cared to understand. When I walked into the courtroom, I felt eyes turn. Some looked with curiosity, a few with recognition, most with confusion. I took a seat in the back row, behind the prosecution's table. I didn't wave. I didn't make a sound. My parents sat on the other side, behind the defense. My mother's heels tapped nervously. My father sat stiff, arms crossed, like he was holding something in. They didn't notice me at first. Then Brooke was brought in, wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hands cuffed in front of her. She looked pale, stripped of the grace she'd worn so easily at the engagement party. The judge read the charges: wire fraud, money laundering, financing terrorism. My mother gasped. My father didn't blink. I stayed still. Brooke's lawyer made a case for bail. No criminal record, strong ties to the community, engaged to be married. The assistant U.S. attorney cut in. "Your Honor, the defendant has demonstrated knowledge of complex financial networks. She has access to illicit funds. She's a flight risk." Then came the evidence. exhibit after exhibit. An email Brooke had sent, instructing a transfer of $2 million to an offshore account. A recorded phone call, her voice calm and clear. Every word chipped away at whatever denial my parents had clung to. And then the prosecutor paused. He glanced behind him. "Your Honor," he said, "the FBI agent in attendance is Captain Tessa Harlow. She serves in the Army's counterterrorism division. Her work helped expose the network this case is part of." That's when my mother saw me. Her face changed, like a switch had flipped. At first, confusion. Then disbelief. Then something else entirely. "Tessa?" she whispered. My father turned. His mouth opened, but no words came. Brooke looked straight at me. Her expression cracked. She saw the uniform, the name tag, the ribbons, the badge. She connected the dots. She understood who I really was, who I'd always been. The judge looked my way. "Captain Harlow, do you have anything to add to this proceeding?" I stood slowly. "No, Your Honor," I said. "Nothing to add." My voice was steady. My hands didn't shake. But inside, I felt everything shift. My mother's voice trembled. "Tessa, please. She's your sister." I looked at her and said, calm and clear, "I know exactly who she is." The judge denied bail, $5 million, cash only, electronic monitoring, passport surrender. I left through a side door, my boots echoing on the marble floor. In the parking garage, I heard footsteps behind me. My mother's voice, breathless. "You knew," she said. "You knew they were investigating her." I didn't turn around. "I can't discuss an open case." "You're her sister," she cried. I turned then. "And I'm an officer in the United States Army. I don't bend the law for blood." Her face collapsed. She didn't mean to. She didn't understand. I met her eyes. She moved money that got people killed, people I've spent years trying to protect. For once, she had no words. Neither did I. I walked to my car, the uniform still sharp on my shoulders. They'd spent a lifetime overlooking me. But now, they knew, and they couldn't unsee it. Brooke's voice cracked as she turned to look at me. Her eyes were wide, pleading, full of disbelief. She looked like she still expected me to step forward, to say something that would make this all go away, but I didn't move. I stayed seated, hands clasped in my lap, the weight of my uniform grounding me. My badge caught the light. The courtroom was silent, except for her quiet sobs. Her lawyer tried to object to the exhibit being read, but it was too late. The prosecutor read aloud her email, the one that linked her directly to the money transfers, the one that proved intent. "Make sure the Cyprus account is ready. We're moving $2 million on Tuesday." The words hung in the air like smoke. My mother gasped. My father shut his eyes. Preston stared at Brooke like he didn't recognize her. Because maybe he didn't. None of them really knew who she was. But I did. When the judge asked if I had anything to add, all I said was, "No, Your Honor." Then I stood. My boots echoed against the tile. I didn't have to say more. The silence spoke for me. Brooke's voice found me as I neared the exit. "Tessa, wait." It was the first time she'd said my name, with anything other than boredom. "Please," she whispered. "Help me." I stopped but didn't turn around. Our mother was crying. "She's your sister," she said again, like that one fact could undo everything. "You have to do something." I looked at her. Really looked. "I know exactly who she is," I said, "and what she chose to become." They stared at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Or maybe I'd just stopped pretending. "I spent my life protecting people from threats like this," I told them. "I don't get to pick and choose based on who shares my blood." Brooke's tears kept falling. She looked so small in that orange jumpsuit. The same girl who once called me her hero. The same girl who mocked me at her party. Like I didn't matter. The same girl who built a business on lies. Justice doesn't bend for family. That's what I'd been taught. That's what I'd lived. In that courtroom, I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I was the officer who helped bring a criminal to justice. Not because I wanted to, because I had to. I walked out of the courtroom alone, leaving behind the cries, the questions, the family who'd never really seen me. I didn't look back. Some lines can't be uncrossed. Some truths demand to be faced. And in that moment, I finally understood something I'd been dancing around my whole life. I hadn't lost my family. They'd lost me. Years before that courtroom, with every dismissal, every shallow smile, every time they looked through me like I wasn't there, Brooke's tears came too late. And for once, I didn't feel guilty for not wiping them away. The letter arrived on a rainy Tuesday, slipped between case files and inner office memos. I didn't recognize the handwriting at first. The return address gave it away. It was from Danbury, Federal Correctional Institution. Brooke. I almost tossed it. Not out of spite. Just because I didn't know what it could say that hadn't already been said in court. But something made me open it. The tone was quiet. No excuses. No requests. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. Just acknowledgement. She wrote that prison had given her time to think. In the first 3 months, she was angry at everyone but herself. Then one day, she remembered a photo of me from Quantico. Our mother had called it militant. Our father said I looked like I'd joined the Peace Corps. She wrote about every time they made me feel small because they didn't understand my work. About how she used to roll her eyes when I said I couldn't talk about an assignment. About how she never imagined those same assignments were saving lives. I see you now, she wrote. I see what I couldn't see before, and I'm sorry for all of it. I read the letter 3 times. Not because I needed to, but because it felt like something I'd waited years to hear. Then I folded it carefully and put it in the back of my desk drawer. I didn't write back. Not because I hated her, not because I didn't care, but because the chapter was closed. Her words meant something. They mattered, but they didn't change what had been done. Some things you carry alone. Some letters you read once and let go. The day my promotion was announced, I was in the field, not behind a podium. It was quiet. Just my team, a few senior officers, and a plaque that would eventually collect dust on my wall. Still, I felt proud. A week later, my phone rang. It was my mother. She'd seen the press release. She wanted to come to the formal reception. Said she and my father wanted to celebrate me. I told her no, not angry, not bitter, just no. Tessa, please, she said. We want to make things right. I let the silence stretch. You can't, I said. You spent years showing me I didn't matter. One reception doesn't undo that. She didn't argue. She just breathed into the phone like she was holding something back. What do we do now? She asked finally. You live with your choices, I said. Just like Brooke is. I hung up and didn't call back. People ask me sometimes if I wish it had gone differently. If I miss having a family that cheers me on. I used to. Not anymore. Because here's what I know now. I was never invisible. They just never looked. I stopped needing their validation the day I understood my own worth. It didn't come from medals, or titles, or courtroom silence. It came from showing up, doing the job, saving lives without needing applause. That's the kind of pride no one can take from you, not even the people who refuse to see it. I sleep well now. I don't carry the weight of being unacknowledged. I carry purpose, and that's more than enough.